Welcome to another episode of Moments That Could Have Changed Football Forever. I'm Peter Thornton. I'm with my fellow and co-author, Peter Prickett.
Hi, everyone.
Hi. And I'm delighted to have with us author, journalist and filmmaker, author of my favourite football book, Barca, the Making of the Greatest Team in the World, Mr. Graham Hunter.
Lads, it's nice to be with the Pedros. Thank you for inviting me, and congratulations for coming up with a unique concept. I've never seen anybody argue this so well in a book form, a podcast form. So I'm pleased to be here.
Just for the benefit of our listener, Graham, your background, you're based in Spain now. Whereabouts in Spain are you sitting at the minute?
Yeah, I've lived in Spain for nearly a quarter of a century. It's not based at all. I live here. I live in Barcelona. I always have. I chose Barcelona because when I was leaving London, I thought, well, throughout my life, I've always either been next to a river or the sea, always. I really need water to orientate myself one way or another. And Steve Archibald's a magnificent Aberdeen player. And I think he spent a weekend or two at Spurs, 10 days. Played for Barcelona, and I thought, well, if it's good enough for Stevie, it's good enough for me. So I moved here, and I've been here ever since. And Spanish football, Spanish culture, Spanish language have been joys of my life.
And I think you're on record as saying that in terms of being like a journalist, there's a lot more sort of respect between like the journalists in Spain and the clubs and the teams than there is in England, where everyone's looking to trip people up and get clicks and la la la.
I think, Peter, the people who are consuming what you've said need to take into account that I've been here a long time, and therefore, sadly, some things are changing a little bit. In that there's a homogenization of stupidity around the world, and therefore the need for celebrity or the desire for celebrity, the desire for polemic has reached Spain. But from my first days here nearly 23 years ago until now, undoubtedly, unquestionably, there's been less erosion of contact and friendship and communication between the football community, whether that be coaches, players, general staff, and reporters, journalists, writers, broadcasters who are honest and diligent. That erosion is far less than there's been in the UK, and certainly in the UK since I left it. And that's facilitated one of the things that I moved to Spain for, which was to learn more about the profession of football. I mean, you can expand your repertoire, you can learn and improve yourself with words, written or spoken, with age, with practice, with experience. But to be better at communicating about football, it's my opinion that you need access to people who can help you, teach you, show you, or simply give you access to what is daily bread for them. But for us, we need to learn our understanding of better terminology about, and therefore, over my time here, the access, the enjoyment, the friendships have been greater.
Nice.
That was beautiful. That was editing on the hoof, wasn't it?
Time, yes. No, you've obviously got that reputation, in Spain, but and a glowing reputation by the, and it's example by the way that they give you all access areas. The people allow you into the clubs, etc. With the way that they do.
It's helped. Listen, I'm a bit cheery about being blown up in name or reputation. It's helped about the types of organisations for whom I've had access. That helps. And it helps if once you're in, you build trust and you're honest and you're I mean, I don't want to hide this. The people who trust me, the people who have given me their number, who will talk to me, are often a bit bowled over by my sort of Enid Blyton style enthusiasm for football itself. You know, I've never
Brilliant.
ever lost, and it comes with blows that people say, well, why aren't you paying more attention to this, or this is sullying my view of it? And I'm constantly drawn, like the human gaze towards fire. You can't help staring to football matches, football preparation, football tactics, but also football stories,
Yeah.
the way that people have developed, failed, succeeded again. I like joy. I like achievement, and I see it through the lens of setbacks and failures. And before we came onto the record, I used the word doggedness.
Yes.
Doggedness isn't often allied to descriptions of greatness, but I think it's in there as an element, and
Absolutely.
therefore, life wherever you're living will always bring you, a kick in the nuts and slings and arrows. But living in Spain and being able to do the work that I do, they have both been genuine joys, life-changing experiences.
Yeah.
It's made me overall very happy, and I've never lost the understanding of how fortunate I am.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do
Brilliant.
you think that the type of question that you ask has made a massive difference to your relationship with the people who trust you? Because I've been recently teaching a bunch of young hopefuls about press conferences, and I have played them recent press conferences with English managers, and every question is injuries, referees' decisions, next game. There's never a question about the tactics. There's never a question about the pieces of individual or team play. So do you think the type of question has really helped you?
I think Peter, I sound like a finger pointing scumbag when I go on this, but because you've told me about how much I can and can't swear on this podcast, there's been so many years of F-wittery, and you can use a bleep here, but I mean fuckwits in my profession, that if you're young and bovine and you don't know any better, you imagine that the tool to you succeeding is mimicking or even just being guided by that which you hear on the media and television. And in that way, stupidity repeats.
Yep.
So if anybody thinks that me answering in agreement with your question thinks that I'm elevating myself or I've got a big head about myself, then they're wrong. But I do agree with you because, I mean, there are so many different ways to answer your question. One, usually I'm genuinely interested in the question answer process, eliciting something interesting. Now, so many people in sports media are either sheep or Rottweilers. The sheep are like, well, I better just graze for the usual plankton. And the Rottweilers are like, I'd like to generate a contrary response so that I've got, in the old days before social media, internet, so I've got a headline. So I've got a story for today, for tomorrow. And the most reliable way in their mind to do that is to jab at somebody. But the bovine and the boring go in there. I don't know what motivates them to be so dull. But overall, across my working lifetime, which is now, I don't know how many years, it's well over 30 years in football media, we've begun to not only treat the people that we're speaking to with immense disrespect. We don't seem to either be aware of or fear boring them, being repetitive, making them think, well, I've answered that question today 3 times, last week 6. Now, if you, in any, never mind press conferences or an interview, in a conversation, if you've got no regard for the other person and whether they're bored or whether you've rattled them deliberately or whether you've disrespected them, a conversation would be, as Hobbes used to say, nasty, brutish and short.
Yep.
So, yes is the answer, and it's partly me, and again, it's partly who I work for. I've chosen not to work for organisations who want to go for polemic. But again, the final part of my answer, which as usual is long, sorry, but I'm being honest.
No, that's good.
Is that honestly, I've sat with many, many different cameramen in filmed interviews, and a large number of them have said, I've never heard somebody speaking like that. Or one of them said, I'd travel anywhere to listen to you interviewing. And it's because I want the person in the other seat to shine, to be honestly represented. I'm genuinely interested in what they've got to say. I'm genuinely interested in breaking down barriers of language, age. I don't look it, but apparently with each year I'm getting older. No, lads, that wasn't a joke. There's zero evidence at all. But when you're interviewing a 20-year-old, like I'll be interviewing after this chat we've had, I'll be interviewing Ugarte, the Uruguayan organising midfielder at Paris Saint-Germain in Paris. And I'm well aware that there's a gigantic age gap between us. There's a cultural gap. My Spanish is more than adequate, but it's not native. So sometimes you have to break down timidity, the fact that the last time the person you're speaking to did an interview of any kind, they had their fingers burned. It's a job of work. It's a job of preparation. And then once you're in it, which is not, I admit, what you asked, Peter, again, the fact that I was born with this just absolutely burning love for football. Somehow, by osmosis, that comes out. I don't have to try and convince them or show them. In the majority of my interviews, which are therefore productive, happy experiences, and I'm welcome back, something transmits. One, that I am genuinely interested in you, the interviewee, what you've got to say. I'll set no traps. And if I've got something tough to ask, I'll just come out and say it. I won't try and pussyfoot around and then lure them into some answer that I can then twist a little bit, put a headline on. You know, that, again, if I was allowed to swear properly, then this would be an expletive review. It's my long answer.
It's a great answer, that, Graham. And I think one of the things, you know, obviously what unites us all on this pod at the minute is our great love for football. And I think the point that you've made there, Peter and I have both coached kids. And it's exactly the same with kids, because kids, even more than the great and good in football, can tell when you're not at it with them. They can tell when you're being patronising, or, as you say, either poking the bear or being boring with them, you know, patronising, etc., etc., etc. And I think it's such a good answer, that, because it cuts across everything in football. It isn't just the great and the good, is it? That, you know, that you apply that to. If you can show that you have an empathy with them, then we're all going to get along fine, and that's what it's all about. It is. We're really delighted with your what if that you've chosen, because unknowns to you, this is the one that kicked it all off. What if Ronaldo and Messi?
I do know that, PT, because I've read, you know, large tranches of the book, and you explain that.
All right, right.
We've got, for those who are about to buy moments that could have changed football forever, both Peters do an intro. And obviously when I received it, it's the first thing I went to try and understand you a little bit more. PT, you
Brilliant.
a tiny amount of past, because we used to go to church together. But what I thought I would do is, like, before you understand the book, try to understand its authors. So I did know that this was
Brilliant.
And I don't know what questions you'll ask me, but I have a different. You've tried to do something that I fully understand, in that you've flown a kite up in the air, and I'm a big Mary Poppins fan, so let's go fly a kite is a great idea up to the highest height. But then you try to back your ramblings. You try to make as much factual support for the hypothesis, and you break down in, well, this player that might have been displaced by that movement had these statistics. It's a really interesting way to do it, because it elevates it far beyond, well, there's nothing wrong with a pub chat about football. You've tried to elevate it around that, whereas I have a couple, just simply through experience of being in this city, I have a couple of things to throw into the mix that will be different from the chapter that you wrote. But I looked at all the various things that you did, and I thought, well, where will I be least likely to make a complete arse of myself? And I chose that.
Well, I think the great thing is when Peter found that little niche where it might happen, that little moment in time where, you have to stretch a few things to make it happen. But, the thing that it happens, you think that's realistic?
Well, let's tuck into it.
Yep.
Your book is not about re-reporting stories. Your book is about a dream, a hypothesis, a chin-scratching moment. What happens is that you've bumped into reality, because very early in my life here in Barcelona, a man called Colin Hutchinson, who was Mr. Nice Guy. He was managing director at Chelsea, and he was the guy who transmitted to Ruud Gullit that he was being sacked. And Ruud Gullit for a long time said, there's a Mr. Nice Guy behind this, because Colin was a genuinely decent, nice man. But it was left to him to communicate Ken Bates' decision that Ken Bates, scumbag, that Gullit was to be sacked. Colin stayed at Chelsea for a significant amount of time after that, and then went to work in an agency up quite near where both of you live. And we'd retained, I think, at minimum respect for one another. I'd been a news reporter, sports news reporter, and chief football reporter, and all this kind of nonsense in England. And he phoned me voluntarily one day. I wasn't chasing him, and he said, look, just a little tip off. There are two guys at Sporting Lisbon that are represented by a Portuguese, but we've been given mandates in the UK, and said one of them's called, he said it's a strange name, it's Quaresma, and the other one is called Cristiano Ronaldo. And by the way, in the book, you've called him what you think. He's Cristiano. There's only one Ronaldo.
Yes.
100%.
We're on board with that.
Yeah. Footballer. So Cristiano from here on in. Anyway, Colin said, look, he said, I think Cristiano might become the better footballer, but Quaresma's a little older, he's ahead, he's very skilled. He said, look out, these guys are likely going to move. They're very likely move to England. But he said, I'll keep you in touch. And a couple of months later, as the season was coming to an end, which would have been season 2002-2003, or maybe it was midway through, he was like, Barcelona are going to take Quaresma. They were offered Cristiano Ronaldo.
There we go.
Sporting wanted to do that deal, but Barcelona chose Ricardo Quaresma. Now, this bumps into your hypothesis, because then we can take fact and go, all right, what if then? Because I think you here's the window when it could have happened, and I've got something to share about that window too.
Yeah.
So that hypothesis has Leo Messi at that stage, not quite 2 years, but it's 2003 that Cristiano joins Manchester United. It's 2003 that within a matter of days, one of them joins Barcelona, one of them joins Manchester United, and it's not until season 2004-2005 that Messi makes his debut briefly against Espanyol halfway through, and makes his scoring debut in 2005. I think May 2005 against Albacete. So there's a little chunk of time where, had the deal gone through as Sporting wanted it to happen, to Barcelona, not to Manchester United, Cristiano Ronaldo would have arrived at Camp Nou as a gawky winger, right winger principally, because by a little bit of distance, the right is his stronger foot. And he would have come to a team then managed by Frank Rijkaard. He would have arrived in the same transfer window as Ronaldinho.
Mm-hmm.
And there might have been some positional difficulties because Ronaldinho was very much established. He wanted freedom of position, so he could and did play wide, usually wide left, but he could play like a false nine, he could play as a 10. He sort of, within a reasonable band of elasticity, played kind of where he wanted. But he arrived in a team which was very, very raw, and which, originally, I think, in fact, it may even have been in that first season that it was still, who was the wonderful Atletico coach? I would need to check whether Radiantic was still, he had a one season shot, and it might have been that he'd have arrived into that, I forget. But very imminently, no, if it was Ronaldinho, then it was Frank Rijkaard. It was Frank Rijkaard he'd had arrived. They went that first half season with the vice president Sandro Rosell wanting to sack Rijkaard. They were pretty poor until Edgar Davids joined in January. And therefore, Cristiano Ronaldo would have been at Barcelona with Messi, nothing but a noise in the background. Sort of, he's coming. The magic is near, because he was still at that stage playing for the juvenile side, and
I guess they knew, though, didn't they? They knew that he was coming.
Well, it's interesting because I know what you mean, Peter, but across his time, when they were signing him at first, famously, the director said, "This guy will make a table football player." Yeah. In his first year, he was both injured, and there was a bureaucratic dispute with the FA about registration. They very nearly lost him because the family were sick and tired. They very nearly lost him to Espanyol. Real Madrid were then hovering around and trying. Who knows if that hypothesis comes off?
Yeah.
There's book 2. However, they knew by then that he was pretty special, but he was still extremely small. He was beloved. The players, noticeably Deco, Silvinho, and Ronaldinho, flocked to him in training because, one, he still looked like a boy, but two, they knew he was as special as Ronaldinho in terms of skills, and that's saying something. But he was, he could sulk. The first game I ever saw him play for the B team, he was placed out on the wing, and he hated that, and he sulked. He wanted to be a 10. He wanted to be in behind the striker. The B team in those days were on that day were playing 4-2-3-1, not 4-3-3, which was in the process of being re-established under Rijkaard and wasn't going particularly well. So what would have happened? Cristiano being older, being bigger, having come from Sporting, I think sharing a language with Ronaldinho, I think would have been dragged along in Ronaldinho's slipstream in terms of supplying him. If you remember the original Cristiano Ronaldo, I mean, the transformation is unbelievable because he was genuinely a winger.
Yeah.
He genuinely thought that you were there for tricks. Tricks were really important.
Yeah.
And it was Van Nistelrooy at United and Alex Ferguson that bullied it into him, that delivery, that winning, that goals, the end product. Now, Ronaldinho, like Cristiano, really believed that part of the ticket price was show.
Yep.
So how quickly Cristiano would have been converted into a goal-scoring striker, and then how he would have reacted to little Messi coming through and needing to play sort of on the right wing too, because you've got an immediate clash there because the evolved Cristiano is either left wing coming, particularly Romero coming onto his right, moving in that typical movement that we remember. But remember, Carlos Queiroz moved him during his last couple of seasons, specifically moved him to play centre forward at United. I remember a friend of mine saying directly, not me, saying to Carlos Queiroz, "Why are you doing that?" And he said he hates it. He hates being the 9. But he's bumping his head he's so good that he's bumping into the ceiling. And if we don't challenge him by making him doing something, we've got players that can play around him. We've got a trio that will really work. But if we ask him to do something that he doesn't like, he's so stubborn to prove us wrong that he'll improve. Give him a challenge, make him be better by putting him in a difficult. It was one of the most daring things I've heard during my career, but it worked. So eventually he could play 9 as well. But as Messi's coming through, if you remember that first time they're on a Ballon d'Or plinth or whatever you call it together, and I think it's Kaká and is it Cristiano in third and Messi in second or vice versa?
No.
And there's a brilliant shot. Look it up and put it with the podcast. There's a brilliant shot. I'm sure it's Kaká's year. And Cristiano's looking across at this little scruffy tramp that looks like he's come out of boys' football. And Cristiano's chewing a wasp. So it must have been Messi's second and Cristiano's third, I guess. But he's not happy at all. And it's one of the things you get with Cristiano is you can tell every emotion that goes through his head.
Yeah, don't play poker, isn't it?
No. He's fuming. He's absolutely drinking vinegar, isn't he? He's like, what's this stuff? So how would that have happened in the team initially, I think, is a massive question.
Well, what you about Cristiano and Ronaldinho remind me of PSG and Ronaldinho and JJ Okocha. And they rubbed off of each other massively. Unfortunately, we only played a handful of games together. But the respect that Ronaldinho speaks of JJ Okocha because he was the player who excited him, you could see how Ronaldo maybe wouldn't morph into the killer that he became, and he would become another showman. They'd have a twin showman of Ronaldo and Ronaldinho, massively entertaining, hugely exciting, but maybe not particularly effective.
Sorry, Graham. It's almost like Barcelona's the Harlem Globetrotters, isn't it? If you put Messi with Ronaldinho and Cristiano, where he still thinks tricks are the way forward, brilliant for us all to see. But it's a great point you made about Sir Alex and Van Nistelrooy. Getting into his head that end product is what we're here for.
There was a massive transformation at Carrington, at Old Trafford. I don't know if they ever trained at the Cliff. I can't remember if the Cliff was still in action when Cristiano joined. I think it's Carrington. And there was really, really fierce dislike between Ruud van Nistelrooy and Cristiano. Van Nistelrooy was like, deliver it to me now. I'm the king. Put the ball here. He's the one that made Cristiano cry by saying, your dad, referring to Alex Ferguson at the time when Cristiano's father, who was an alcoholic, had just died. And Van Nistelrooy was hammering him in the way that football people talk about. You wouldn't have these privileges. You wouldn't be able to act this way if it wasn't for your dad. And he meant Fergie. And, as brutal as that was, in the fact that Cristiano did go off a training session in tears a moment of trauma for him. This was part of what made him the scoring monster that he became. It's not as if he would have rejected it if you'd offered to him. It's not as if he didn't have those skills. Nobody inculcated new skills. That was his own desire. That was experience. It was just letting them emerge like a butterfly from a grub. But it happened quicker than it would have at Barcelona, where I think certainly until if it had happened that Messi and Cristiano had stayed together at Football Club Barcelona during the Rijkaard years, would Rijkaard have been the man to say Cristiano's a striker and I see it? Or he didn't say it to Messi. In fact, he underused Messi. He underused Iniesta. Didn't use Iniesta at all because he favoured Van Bommel. He was a Dutchman who'd been taught about size, athleticism, aggression, and he had massive doubts over Iniesta. Messi at that stage was often breaking down hamstring problems until the new regime designed a completely new dietary system for him, and that helped massively. So had they been together in the first tranche of time, one, I think that Cristiano and Ronaldinho would have meshed, would have blended, and the impetus for Cristiano to think about a change or to play centrally probably wouldn't have come from within, or at least it's arguable. Rijkaard wasn't that kind of man. Cristiano being bigger and taller, Rijkaard would have maybe been reaching for him more easily than he did for Leo Messi in general, in my opinion. But would Cristiano have indulged in what became Ronaldinho and Deco's alternative lifestyle? I don't think so. I think that the drive that he's got, he was telling people long before it became public, particularly telling his fitness trainer who he had at Manchester United and at Real Madrid, I want to become remembered as the best player ever. Not the best in the world this year, the greatest footballer ever. And he was laughed at. So I wonder to what degree he might have uncoupled himself from Ronaldinho's behaviour and Peter Pan ideas about I'll be this shape forever, doesn't matter how I eat or drink or party. There might have been gradually a separating of the ways, but had they lasted together until Pep takes over, then the question is like, well, which Messi or Cristiano, which of them would Pep have seen as when Pep wins the 6-2 at Madrid by saying to Messi, you're playing as a false nine. Let's see whether Cannavaro and the German centre-half, whose name has gone from the, it's Metzelder, whether they can choose to follow you. If they don't, you'll be inspected. Anyway, what would Pep have done if he'd had in that first season, as you write about Eto'o, and you write about Ibrahimovic, and you write about David Villa? What would have happened if Pep had both of those resources? How would he have treated them? Which of them would have said, you're my goal-scoring linchpin? Just as your idea, I suppose, is designed for, it's kind of, it blows the mind a little bit to work out what might have happened.
What if Brian Clough had managed England?
What if Ronaldo and Messi had played together?
What if Pep Guardiola managed in League Two?
These are just some of the things discussed in a brand new book, Moments That Could Have Changed Football Forever. Every what if moment in the book has been chosen to spark debate. Buy your copy now online at Amazon or Waterstones.
Do you think they'd have got on, Graham, in terms of, we know that relationship that Cristiano had with Wayne at Old Trafford, where Wayne sort of trailed round after him. Do you think they'd have been like equals, or do you think because Cristiano was a little bit older, Messi would have trailed him, or two big egos?
So tough. One, Wayne, met him a couple of times. Wayne is such a different personality than the two we're talking about now that One of the strange things that access allowed me was to watch the odd relationship between, and it's a friendship, it's a deep, proper friendship on a personal basis and on a family basis between Luis Suarez and Messi. They're deeply intertwined. They've got a South American hardness. They came from relatively similar underprivileged backgrounds, which has never left them. They can love winning. And I have to be careful not to. You used trailing about Rooney and Cristiano. I'm not going to say that Leo Messi trailed about or traipsed about behind Suarez, but there wasn't any question about the personal hierarchy.
Yeah, it's really
You got
interesting.
Suarez talking, he would tell you Messi's the greatest footballer ever. He's 10 times as good as you are. You praise him up and it would be genuine. But in actions, reactions, attitude towards people, chest out, even how their friendship worked.
There was an alpha male, you think, there?
If you ask anybody, however, that's in 8 out of 10 situations. On the pitch,
The pitch is a different story, isn't it?
but even Peter, the training pitch,
Yes.
infamous about Leo's hair trigger in certain circumstances. I mean, almost above all. Now, there are two things that if you found yourself playing with or against a footballer in training in the bounce matches who didn't rate, you quite often leave one on them, teammate. But if there was a foul or an offside, because he played the bounce matches as if they were the World Cup final.
Yeah.
Always, without exception. And if he didn't get given, because obviously you don't bring referees in from, people don't talk about it. So it's always going to be a staff member of some description.
Yep. I've been there.
Was the ball out?
Yep.
Is that an offside or not? Is that a foul or not? And you know, he most famously, it's become most public that he lost his rag at Luis Enrique in the winter turn between December and January of 2014-15 when they'll go on to win the treble. And they went nose to nose and had to be pulled apart. I know Luis Enrique really, really well. I know what he can be like if he's annoyed. And they were pulled apart over Luis Enrique saying no foul, refereeing the match, no foul. So using that as a way to come back to your, is it possible that Cristiano in his behaviour, like I've met Cristiano a number of times. There's a lot of things about him that I can't go with. Where he is right now, I'd never go and work there.
Yeah.
What he says about that league, just morally, I couldn't go in that country. These Globe Soccer Awards, where his agent gets Agent of the Year every year, and Cristiano has won this year. He won 3 up. He really needs that. That's Popeye's spinach to him.
Yeah.
Crack open the can of, even if it's slightly falsified adoration.
Yeah.
And off he goes again. He needs that. The stuff that he was tried for, and I think it was Las Vegas. As far as I'm concerned, that feels appalling. And ultimately, there's no trial, and you have to say we're educated in the UK. Innocent till proven guilty, and he's not been proven guilty yet. So let's put that to one side. My meetings with him, my interviews with him, have been a joy. He's very funny. He's witty. He's undoubtedly bright, articulate. And so you've tempted us three, because I'm not going in here alone, into a Bermuda Triangle of could he have been as Luis Suarez was to Messi had they been
Lionel, yeah.
as youngsters? I think still teenagers, 85 to 83. Yeah. So Cristiano would have gone to Manchester United as a teenager, yeah. So, wow. I don't know.
See, in the book, Pete finishes up with, this town ain't big enough for the both of us. That's where
it's what you talk about with the spinach. But I felt that Messi, because of his, the way the voting seems to have gone, even now because of the creativity plus the goal scoring, Messi would probably have hoovered up more of the awards than Ronaldo, and that craving of Ronaldo's to
Ballon
win,
d'Or, for example. I get it.
Yeah, and I think that craving for it would be where, whatever stage they get together, their relationship's going to have a very limited time because Ronaldo wants that.
Whether that would have meant them disliking each other or not getting on a daily basis, I'm more unsure about whether that would have led to Cristiano saying, I need to go somewhere else in order to show I'm the best. I think that's a good point. It's slightly different from what we started off on. But no, you're saying they wouldn't have liked each other. I'm still unsure. I think that if you look at how they've got on in later years, which is partly stimulated by Leo's kids, sort of going, Dad, there's Cristiano, can we go over and talk to him at awards? Which obviously couldn't have happened when they were young. I think the antagonism that we saw was because they were literally, one was, in the old Western terms, one was wearing a black hat, one was wearing a white hat. Yeah. They were just, it was two sides that it was very difficult unless you've grown up together before the pressure starts, which was Xavi and Iker, because he is. Antagonism, personally, if they're in the same club from 2003, I don't, personal antagonism, I don't know. Peter P., your idea that Cristiano would have needed to go and say, well, I'll show everybody, that I buy pretty quickly. But let's turn the page, because another thing that you don't cover in the chapter is that in the year, you both will remember, probably with mutual disappointment, that Cristiano was due to go to Manchester United in the summer, to Real Madrid in the summer of 2008. And Fergie stopped it. Remember, he phoned
my dead body, he said, didn't he?
No, he's phoned Cristiano, and he said over my dead body about another transfer, maybe it's Cristiano, and I wouldn't sell them a virus or whatever.
That was it. Yeah.
But when the deal was pacted, the price was pacted, and Cristiano had asked to go, Fergie stopped it and phoned Cristiano and said, listen, son, you're not going. And it was following the Moscow win over Chelsea, and Fergie wanted to retain the Champions League, do a 2 in a row, which he hadn't done. Obviously, United had never done. And everything went on hold for a year. And this was public because it had been announced that he was going. It was, the brakes were slammed on. And I know from two people centrally involved that at that time, listen, I'll tell you who I know from the Real Madrid president of the day, which was Ramon Calderon, who had struck the deal with Manchester United, that Ferran Soriano, now Peter T at your club, then a vice president at Barcelona, got directly in touch with Cristiano and said, we will pay Manchester United the same transfer fee and we will pay you more money, bigger wages. Come to us. Make the move that we should have made in 2003.
Why was it?
And Ramon Calderon, then the president of Real Madrid, a really interesting and, for my money, likable guy, said that when they got together at some forum, I think it might have been the Champions League draw in the August of 2008, according to Ramon Calderon, and I haven't had this stood up from Ferran taunted him a little bit. We're going to take Cristiano right from underneath your noses.
Wow.
He's coming to us. And Cristiano said to them directly, there's nothing you can do. I want to go to Real Madrid.
Wow.
You can't, there's no money, nothing can change my mind. Not only have I given my word, but that's the club I want to go to. And so he did, after losing the Champions League final to Barcelona in Rome, the summer of that, May of that season. So in the book, you postulate when it might have happened, and you're very detailed about Pedro and Villa and Zlatan and Eto'o. Whereas, genuinely, if Cristiano's, because for Manchester United, no big deal.
Right.
Which if they get the same money, so if Cristiano doesn't say no, I'm a Madridista, it happens.
Goes to Barca, that is mega, isn't it?
Well, so to use your chapter, he goes to Football Club Barcelona at a time when, number one, Messi is a predominant footballer, arguably the predominant footballer. He's scored the second goal in the Champions League final. They're about to go into the second year of Guardiola's brilliance. He's been transformed into the false nine role that will accelerate his scoring. At that stage, he's ahead of Cristiano in the Champions League. Cristiano took, people forget this, I think 27 games for United to score a Champions League goal.
Wow.
And the fact that he's now gigantically the top scorer just tells you that what he did was, apart from the change of position at United and playing more centrally and Real Madrid being a dominant Champions League, he went, I'm having that. I'm having that record. It became gigantically important to him. He and Messi for several years alternated by 3-4 goals. And now I forget the distance between them, but the distance is might be 25, 30 goals. So he comes into that team at a time where it's not Pep Guardiola saying, get me Cristiano Ronaldo. It's the directors going, we want to smash Real Madrid, hurt them, and bring this guy to a team that at that stage had Eto'o and, Pedro didn't play in that final, but Pedro was about to break through. Busquets had just broken through. But Messi played where Pep wanted him to, which was predominantly in this false nine. They had Titi Henry. You write a lot about Titi Henry in the chapter, and what he did or didn't do for Football Club Barcelona, where he played. And you're right, he largely played as a wide player. Not even always a wide player coming in, as a wide player.
Yeah.
So the ramifications of
2009 final, that was the one for me where you sit there, because that forward line United had with Rooney and Tevez and Cristiano, and he's on the pitch and he sees that he's on the pitch, because as a City fan you're going, it's not a given this at all. And you see Barcelona outplay them from basically start to finish. He's on the pitch, and we talked about his doggedness before. You're just there thinking he's going to Madrid now, and there must be something in him that when I want to beat this.
I agree with you. I think that Cristiano had already, it was months before that Ferran Soriano comes in and tries to change his mind, and he says, no, it's Madrid for me. So he doesn't stay on course to join Madrid because of that defeat in Rome. But the idea for Cristiano, and how we all know he's motivated, what spurs him on, the idea of, I will take these guys down.
Yeah.
I want to take Madrid beyond this. That must have just been catnip for him. No, I bet he was. Remember, you can't say he nearly won it, but when United were on top, which was most of the time until Eto'o scores, was Cristiano who was nearly doing the damage. It's Cristiano that set up the chance that their I think it's the Korean player that gets blocked by PK on the point of scoring.
Yeah.
And I buy your idea that when he doesn't join Barcelona, when he has the opportunity to become part of that Guardiola side, and who knows, maybe save them the mess that they made over Ibrahimovic, because it was a total drama, total mess. Maybe stop them buying David Villa, who scores at Wembley in 2011 and is a genuinely all-time magnificent player in Spain, the leading scorer ever for the national team. Do they buy them? Do they trade Eto'o and Ibrahimovic? Don't know. But your basic premise is that if he just says a different sentence, they are united. Cristiano and Messi are united. Both as grown-up, world-class, Ballon d'Or, Champions League winning footballers at Barcelona from 2009 onwards. But it goes to Peter P's idea. But then, how quickly does Cristiano tire of it's Messi, Messi, Messi everywhere? Is he accepted the same by the fans and the media in the way that, because although he's Argentinian, Messi's one of our own, treated like that because he's been there for years? How, you're the experts, how do you figure that out?
Well, if he gets the figures, I think, isn't it? You know, we're talking about him being effective. So, you know, the flying the kite, as you said at the start of the pod, you got those two together. And Cristiano, you know, breaks all goal scoring records that we've ever seen alongside Lionel. You know,
well, let's go to one game in particular. In what would have been his first season at Barcelona, the only blemish really on their card is that they lose a treble to he who shan't be named, and a special once, and Inter Milan, and they lose in the semi-final to Inter Milan. They get treated very badly in the first leg. There's the Icelandic eruption of the volcano. There's ash in the air. They have to take a bus from Barcelona to Milan. Yeah. They're knackered. They get overrun. There's two bad decisions: a foul before a goal and an offside goal, and a 3-1 defeat. Maybe Guardiola doesn't play all that cleverly. He plays Dani Alves as a winger, not as a fullback. It doesn't work. So Cristiano Ronaldo and Leo Messi are playing in that game. Does that make a difference? I think that's harder to argue. I'll finish, Peter, by saying in the second leg, they're playing against 10 men because I think Mota gets sent off. They can't break them down. Over and over again, they don't find a way to break them down. They only win 1-0 late on from a PK goal. There's the question. Does Cristiano in that game with Messi, does that make a difference? Does that change history by his will to win, his completely different profile from any other Barcelona player on the pitch that night, his aerial ability for balls into the box, his just, I will not be beaten? Does that take them into the final against Bayern Munich, which, by the way, they win at a canter, just as Inter Milan did? Does that give Pep Guardiola what then will become 3 Champions League final wins in consecutive Rome? They go through and they win at the Bernabeu.
Yeah. The beauty of the what-if concept, Graham, you're just hitting, isn't it? It's the beauty of the knock-ons.
Tactically, that game, or those 2 games, are held up as Mourinho's masterpiece by clogging the middle of the pitch and saying, okay, put balls in the box, which I will note I remember seeing many, many years prior to that with Norwich City doing it at Anfield against the Dalglish managed Liverpool team. So perhaps Mourinho owes quite a bit to, I think it might be Malky Mackay. But yes, by the pure difference of profile of having a player with that leaping ability, that ability to bully central defenders. And would Mourinho be able to say, it's okay, put balls in the box? Well, no, he can't, because if you put balls in the box, you are playing to the strength of one of the best headers of the ball that we've seen for the last 15 years.
It's a minimum. It's one of the things that, your intriguing book, it's well-titled Moments That Could Have Changed Football Forever, because now we're talking about, I think in the first bit when I told you about potentially him going there as a teenager, this goes more to the nub of your idea about what are the knock-on effects. And you know, Barcelona have never yet done what Real Madrid went on to do with Cristiano, 3 straight Champions League wins, which hadn't been done since I was falling in love with European football. And the reason that Cruyff was my idol was that Ajax 1, 2, 3 from 1971 onwards, followed by a team that I hated at that stage because as a kid. They robbed Ajax of continuing, and Bayern Munich won 3 in a row. It didn't happen again until a Cristiano Ronaldo driven Real Madrid. Lots of other elements. It wasn't Cristiano. But we're arguing, given that they did win it in Rome, Barcelona, they did win it at Wembley pretty sweepingly. He's there. Do they then make it their Champions League?
Yeah. I think the other intriguing bit is, does Pep leave? Isn't it?
Wow,
Does his three?
That's in the
three. He's got Messi and Cristiano.
I tell you, at the time, there were 3 things that made him leave. One was those were the first 4 years. Am I right? Before 8, 9, 9, 10, 10, 11, 11, 12.
Yeah.
First 4 years of his senior coaching career, and they burned his candle down to a low wick. Was it impossible for him to stay on? No. But at that stage, he wasn't as accustomed to the stresses and the strains and the media demand, and he wasn't as used to what he was doing to himself. That was one. The second one was his relationship with the by then president, Sandro Rosé, was bad, genuinely bad. The third one, and this goes directly to what you said, PT, is that to this day, he's obsessed by what can I do to stop our rivals finding us out? You know, decryptifying us. Cristiano in that team does give you another resource, because he was using Isaac Cuenca, who's gone on, poor kid, lovely footballer, to have not much of a career because of injury. He was using Isaac Cuenca in different positions and Iniesta in different positions, and he was trying to come up with ideas that, irrespective of how good they were or what they were strategically, one of their central aims were to make the other team go, what the fuck is this? I didn't expect this. I have no idea what's happening. Particularly elite rivals who would the draw might come and you might have weeks to unpick Barcelona. He was obsessed by that. So back to Double P's idea about does Cristiano just give you another element completely in either of the interties, and does it decrease Pep's need to burn himself out looking for new ideas? Because that's what that 11-12 season was fundamentally about. I need to come up with something different. The idea about if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I've never heard him talk about that phrase, but that doesn't exist in Guardiola's mind. Doesn't exist. So might he have stayed? There's at least an argument. Other reasons took him away. And remember, he took a sabbatical.
Yep.
You know, City had been trying for him. First destination after Barcelona, please Pep. No. First destination after your sabbatical, please Pep. No. He wanted the call from Manchester United. I absolutely know without question that his idea about reinvigorating Old Trafford, putting his name in history and matching that idea, not Ferguson, but the Busby Babes idea, all that was fundamentally attractive to him for years before City got themselves into a position to attract him. So does he spend more time at Barcelona if Cristiano is there? Do you know? I think it's feasible. Yeah, it's a feasible. And given that could have changed football forever,
it might have just done
your title.
Could I just ask you one more question? Because we come into, obviously, it's been absolutely fantastic. And it's something you touched on earlier. And as I said, me and Peter both done a lot of coaching of kids where one of the things that fascinates me about footballers in general is the difference between themselves off the pitch and on the pitch. You know, where I've had like really quiet lads who on the pitch were really vocal, would kill the grandmother to win the game. You know, and then similarly, lads off the pitch who, let's say, were active, had a different moral compass on the pitch. You know, they'd be like thumping other kids off the pitch, but on the pitch, they were at the front of setting up, you know, making sure everyone played correctly, you know, didn't backchat to the referee, all that sort of thing, which I found really fascinating. In of all the people they've met, all the great footballers you've met, who are the ones that are completely different on and off the pitch? You know, would you say?
First of all, I've never been asked that before, so I'm unprepared. It's a really, really good question. One of the ones who most fits his profile on the pitch is David Villa, in that he's a steel, for all his skills, he's a steely, hard, son of a miner, winning-oriented footballer. And I've seen him, thankfully not with me, smash an interviewer when an interviewer put 1 foot wrong, and it was like, portcullis down, 2-word answers, time's up, goodbye. And that's the opposite answer to what you asked.
Mm.
Who doesn't fit his on-field profile when you speak to him?
Is there any players that like big laugh off the pitch and, you know?
Oh, well, look, yeah. For example, you wouldn't know about Joan Capdevila is a Catalan who played for Espanyol, who played for Deportivo La Coruña, who probably came to most prominence playing for Villarreal and was in the World Cup final side that won and marked Arjen Robben and played through the entire second half with his ankle swollen out bigger than a tennis ball because he'd been done by Van Bommel. Such a funny guy. Such an extraordinary. Okay, now you've got me going. Yeah, he is constantly on the lookout for laughs. He's quick to. You can make him laugh easily. Talking about you on the pitch, personality, serious winner, looks a big lump, isn't very good player. Uses phrases like Gattuso once said, like, you know, I was born with triangular feet. You know, that's how bad I am as a footballer. Joan Capdevila will always say, you know, how have I got this far? I'm rubbish. And he's a really, really good footballer, but he'll always put himself down. But when he, you talked about one of the books I wrote, the other book I wrote was about Spain and the trophy treble that they won when they went Euro, World Cup Euro. When Joan Capdevila was, San Juan is a day, I think it must be the longest, what do we call Midsummer? That's it. San Juan, the festival of Midsummer in the UK is called San Juan over here. And what you do is build bonfires and jump over them. So in Euro 2008, when they were in Austria for, I don't know if it was the quarter final or the semi-final, on San Juan, and Joan Capdevila is Juan. So it's his festival, really. It's just a Catalan way of saying Juan. He puts lots of newspapers in a waste paper basket in his hotel room, sets fire to them, and jumps over them just to celebrate the fiesta.
Why would you not?
I'll go to no. Good point well made. I'll go to Terry Gibson, who I count as a friend. We worked together in broadcasting a lot. Did it Revista on Sky, do it La Liga Television here in Spain. Terry on the pitch was ferocious, chased everything, wouldn't give you a second, particularly like picking on 6'2" centre halves, battered them, took a battering. Off the pitch, just the friendliest, nicest, most interesting guy you could possibly imagine. You couldn't believe that this was the guy who looked up at people and said, come on, bring on your worst, give me anything that you like. I don't know who else. So I think Peter P, you threw me on people who are a really good laugh. Well, a guy who, again, you couldn't tell on the pitch, although the fame came out, because when he was at Chelsea, Gus Poyet was called Radio Montevideo by the players, because just perpetually talking. And so on the pitch, you don't see anything like that. He's a serious pro, extremely talented, again, Uruguayan blood winner. Off the pitch, just like there is never a minute when Gus is not speaking or thinking or arguing or laughing or teasing or telling an anecdote, and he's just perpetual motion. And it's like a jukebox, put a dime in the slot, and out comes 16 stories. And he's bright, visionary, interesting. Another guy who, I've screwed it. I've taken your question, I've put it back to front. Who are the guys who are like? I don't know. It's unusual that I'm stumped for answers. Who's the most unlike? I don't know who stands out for being unlike their pitch personality. I don't know.
I always think with footballers, the number of filters they've come through to become an elite player. Mm-hmm. There has to be that, there's an iron will in them all. Never mind, that people, even, tier 2, 3, 4 in England, there's an iron will. You have to have an iron will to reach that level. Never mind elite. So they've all got that.
That's easy to bump into. Into. Whether you know the person well or whether it's an interview, even if the interview's going really well, you can instantly see them switching off and suddenly time management. I'm out of here. I've done my job. Thank you very much. Cheerio. I'll give you a lift somewhere if you want sometimes, but then it's like, right, the chat level often, not always, can be completely different from what it was just like in an interview, because that steel, one of the guys who stood out for that was meeting Robbie Keane, where in the interview he was truthful, he was fun, he was interesting. Off the interview, immediately he was like tough, hard. When something was thrown up that he didn't like that person, he went straight at it. The shields went up again instantly. Yeah, a lot of them. Yeah, that what they've had to go through, what they have to do hour by hour and day by day, people underestimate completely. The demands of, it's our dream to play that well, to win the trophies, to have the terraces singing your name, or the opposition terraces crapping on you so you could go like this and stick your chest out. The salaries, super, all of that magic.
It always makes me laugh when you hear the fans saying, "Oh, they don't try when they play for England. There's no pride when they play for England." When they've had to go out and be the best player on the pitch since they've been 8.
The demands on them, the pressure, the bubble that they're in, the sacrifices that they consistently make. Genuinely, the majority of people have no concept whatsoever, and that's not a criticism.
I always think of
you can't know.
There's a Jerry Rice quote, which is, "Today I do things others won't, so tomorrow I do things that others can't." And that's the one that I always think of.
I went to watch him in the Super Bowl of 95, I think, against the Chargers, and listened, got into the locker room, because you were allowed into the locker room as a journal afterwards. I call that locker room, we'd call it a dressing room. It was the most astonishing thing ever, that like 20 minutes, 25 minutes after they come off the pitch, you're in the dressing room with them, talking to them and listening to people like him. And I think the quarterback was Steve Young in those days, I think, and listening to their attitudes about their discipline and the amount that they have to learn, how well they have to live. Again, the pressure on them, the physical impact on them. I can do what you've done there is really important. There's so much to learn about ideas and philosophies and coping systems in North American sport that can still blend into our thinking in professional football right across Europe, in my opinion. It's a great quote. It's a great quote.
And on that bombshell, and given that we've tiptoed over the hour mark, let's call it full time, I think. It's been magnificent, Graham. Thank you very much.
I've got you extra time. Add injury time.
Injury time. Here we go.
The new Roma manager, who's taken over from that scumbag, is Daniele De Rossi. He looks fierce. He would have cut off a leg for Roma. And the first time, maybe the only time, I interviewed him, I thought, this is one to mind your P's and Q's and how are we going to do this? So I just threw in the fact that while we're waiting for the cameraman to get ready, you throw them little bits and pieces and see if they... Well, I'm Scottish. And he goes, really? I'm like, yeah. And he goes, oh, flower of a Scotland. He starts singing Flower of Scotland to me. I'm like, Daniele, you'll do for me.
Oh, that's a brilliant. Graham, thank you so much. It's been an absolute joy. We could probably talk forevermore. As you say, that love of football is what brings us all together. Thank you so much for that.
Well, it's been a pleasure. I hope the viewers and listeners enjoy it, and let's hope these are some moments that don't change football forever.
Thank you very much, Graham. Bye, everyone.
What if the Munich air crash had never happened?
What if Michael Owen had stayed fit?
What if Ajax never sold?
These are just some of the things discussed in a brand new book, Moments That Could Have Changed Football Forever. Every football fan has a what-if moment that they know would have brought their team glory if things had turned out differently. Every what-if moment in the book has been chosen to spark debate amongst football fans. Buy your copy now online at Amazon or Waterstones and let us know what's your favourite what-if moment in football history.